It was a Thursday evening, 7:42 to be exact. I had just heated up the last of the lentil curry I made 3 nights ago, planning to eat while going over the Q2 projections before bed. That's how dull my life had become. Numbers for dinner, spreadsheets for dessert. The glow from my phone pulled my attention away from the microwave. A new notification blinked across the top. Group message. Family HQ. That thread had been dormant for weeks. I figured it was just another forwarded meme from my aunt or some passive-aggressive update from my sister. But it wasn't that. The message was short, formal, chilling. We've had a discussion, and, after much thought, we think it's best if you step away from the company for now. No hi Zinnia, no let's talk, no damn explanation. It felt like getting fired by a chatbot. Cold, sanitized. I reread the message 3 times, not because I didn't understand it, no, the wording was perfectly clear, but because my brain couldn't process it. It didn't feel real, like a glitch in my own life. Then came the real gut punch. A thumbs up. Astria, my sister. She didn't add a comment, didn't try to soften the blow. Just that dumb little emoji, like she was approving a takeout order, not an exile. My body went still. You ever feel like your skin's still warm, but the rest of you just drops out? That's what it was. A single tap of her thumb said everything. She didn't want me there either. I sat back, the microwave beeping in the background like it was mocking me. I didn't open the door. I didn't even move. The last time Astria stood up for me, we were 12. Some brat at school had said I looked like a boy in my new haircut, and she told him I was smarter than both his parents combined. That was the last recorded instance of her loyalty. We'd been polite since then. Smiles at holidays, forced laughter at company events. But now she'd weaponized silence. The American dream, huh? Build something from scratch with your family, and they still find a way to cut you out like you're the unpaid intern. No call, no meeting, just a group message. I didn't reply right away. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of a meltdown. Instead, I sat there in the quiet, letting the words marinate in the room with me. A friend texted, wanted to grab drinks. I ignored it. The TV played some documentary on inheritance fraud. Timing, I guess, isn't just about comedy. I thought back to how I'd always been the responsible one. That's what they called me, which really meant the one who cleans up the messes. I built the operations systems, streamlined the budget, found the first investors. Astria? She was busy making brand decks with pastel fonts and inspirational quotes, but everyone liked her more. She smiled the right way, wore dresses mom picked, didn't argue in board meetings. I was the builder. She was the showroom model. And now, apparently, the new CEO. Maybe not in title, not yet, but clearly in spirit. I imagined what Mom and Dad might say if I confronted them. You're too intense, Zinnia. Investors want someone who feels warmer. She's more relatable. You know that. This isn't personal. Of course it's personal. It always is when the person being pushed out is the only one who built the damn house. I finally opened the phone again. No new messages, no clarifications. So I typed. Understood. I'll respect that decision. Then, after a breath, I added, and I'll be stepping away from the financial accounts as well. I hit send. No emoji, no follow-up. I turned off the phone and placed it screen down on the counter. The curry had gone cold. But that night, something told me this was just the beginning. The next morning didn't start with an alarm. It began with a ringtone I hadn't heard in weeks, my mother's. It rang just long enough for me to debate answering, and against my better judgment, I did. Zinnia, sweetheart, she began, her voice dripping with artificial warmth, the kind she reserved for country club fundraisers and holiday dinner guests. I hope I didn't wake you. No, Mom, I was up, I said, staring blankly at the untouched coffee grounds on the kitchen counter. She got straight to it, no apologies, no ownership. I just wanted to check in. After yesterday, I know it probably came as a shock, but it's not permanent, honey. We just need a little breathing room in the business, that's all. I stayed silent, let her fill the air. You're still loved, Zinnia. Don't think otherwise. I wanted to believe her. For one irrational second, I really did. But then she added, "It was a family decision." "Mom," I said slowly, "who exactly is we?" She hesitated. That half-second pause told me more than anything else in the conversation. "Sweetheart, don't make this harder than it needs to be." And there it was. I smiled bitterly, not that she could see it. "You mean, don't make it harder for you?" She changed the subject like she hadn't heard me, asked if I'd gotten any rest, told me I should take some time for myself, maybe do one of those silent retreats in Bend like Astria did last year. I hung up before she finished her sales pitch. The silence in my apartment wasn't comforting. It felt loaded, like it was waiting for me to respond, to explode, to unravel. But I didn't give it the satisfaction. Instead, I opened my laptop, hoping to numb myself with some meaningless inbox cleanup. That's when the doorbell rang. I padded barefoot to the door, cracked it open to find a FedEx package sitting neatly on my welcome mat. No sender label, just the standard office supply box with a printed label that read, Zelia Cortez. Zelia. Not Zinnia. Not a typo someone would make unless they'd never bothered to spell it right in the first place. Inside was a birthday box. A leftover company PR kit, complete with branded water bottle, recycled notebook, and a card signed, "Thanks for being part of the journey." Generic, emotionless, probably scavenged from Astria's desk. I didn't throw it away. I placed it on the top shelf of my closet next to my first pitch deck and the framed napkin sketch of our original logo. Not for nostalgia, but for record. Proof. As I walked back into the living room, I passed by the bookshelf we had built together when the company was still just an idea. Back then, we didn't have investors or equity breakdowns or family alignment meetings. We had energy, belief. I spent the only $2,800 I had in savings to create a working prototype of the air filter that eventually secured our first patent. They forgot that. Or maybe they never really saw it. I sat on the edge of my couch, let my feet sink into the rug I bought after our first funding round. It still smelled faintly of the lavender oil Astria used to pour into our office diffuser. God, even that had a story. I reached for my phone and opened the voice memo app, not because I had something profound to say, but because I needed to speak where no one could interrupt. No one could spin it, dismiss it, or suggest I was being too intense. "Day one," I said aloud, my voice steadier than I expected. "Family has made it clear I'm not part of the vision moving forward. Sister supported it. Mother wrapped it in tissue paper and called it love." I paused, breathing in the weight of the moment. I'm not angry, yet, but I'm awake. I saved the file under echoes. Later that afternoon, I took a walk through the neighborhood. Not because I wanted fresh air, but because I needed the noise of the world to drown out the buzz inside my head. I passed couples holding hands, a man teaching his kid how to ride a bike, two college students arguing over which chai latte had less sugar. Everyone else's life just kept moving. I envied them. When I got home, the package still sat on the shelf. I glanced at it and mumbled, "Zelia, huh?" I recorded again that night. Voice softer, tone flatter. Funny how one group chat can rewrite everything. Funny how calm they sound while they're undoing you. Then I played it back. One line stood out. "You're still loved, just not seen." I replayed it, this time turning up the volume. And I knew then, memories can lie if you let them. 3 nights had passed since the group message, long enough for the shock to dull, but not long enough for it to make sense. The silence from my family wasn't loud. It was calculated, precise, and it said more than any phone call could have. I couldn't sleep. Around midnight, I stood in front of the bookcase in my apartment, not sure what I was looking for. My fingers skimmed over old binders, sketches, notebooks filled with branding notes and supplier contacts. Then I saw it, a small, leather-bound journal tucked behind a stack of trade magazines. I hadn't touched it in years. It was from my father. He gave it to me my junior year of college, back when I was still planning to go to grad school. Tucked into the front cover was a short note written in his meticulous penmanship. "One day, this company will be in your hands." Back then, I had believed him. I turned down a full ride to Stanford to stay and build something with him, something for all of us. I poured my savings into that first prototype, worked side by side with him in our garage, ran test after test until we had something real, and now I couldn't even access our shared Google Drive without being locked out. I flipped through the journal slowly, each page a painful reminder that what we had built together had become something I no longer belonged to. I wasn't mourning a dream anymore. I was mourning a lie I'd believed for too long. A ping from my phone pulled me back. I grabbed it off the counter and saw a Facebook notification. My mother, Isolde, had posted a Throwback Thursday photo. Curious, I opened it. The image was from our early company days, our first makeshift office. Lumen sat at his desk, smiling stiffly. Astria posed in the center, arms crossed like she already owned the place. And beside them stood a fresh-faced intern I vaguely remembered. But I wasn't in the photo. Worse than that, there was space where I had been. I remembered that day. I remembered standing between Lumen and Astria. I was the one who'd asked the intern to take the photo. They cropped me out. The caption read, "So proud of the journey we started together. Family, vision, legacy. No tags, no mention of me. I didn't comment, I didn't call, I didn't cry. I screenshotted it, filed it into a new folder on my desktop called Erased, not out of spite, out of necessity. I opened my voice memo app again. This time, I didn't preface anything. If you tell a story long enough without someone in it, I said calmly, eventually people forget they were ever part of it. I paused. They've already forgotten. I won't. The apartment felt colder than it had an hour ago. I pulled my blanket tighter around my shoulders and sat at the kitchen table. That journal still sat next to me, his promise staring back like a cruel joke. I opened my laptop and began organizing everything. Not because I planned to use it, at least not yet, but because I needed a record, emails, contract drafts, the original copyright forms in my name, photos, early designs with my annotations in the margins, everything that proved I had been there, that I had mattered. This wasn't just personal anymore. It was preservation. Somewhere between folder creation and file naming, a new notification appeared in the top right corner of my screen. Your access to family fund operations has been removed by Astria. No message, no explanation, just a clean severing. I stared at it for a long time. A quiet laugh escaped before I realized it was even there. So this was the next move. Delete the evidence, lock me out, pretend I never existed. But they didn't realize I'd already backed it up. Everything. That was the final key, turned quietly in the lock behind me. It started with an email, subject line, Q2 review, clarification needed. It was from Ray Bernard, one of our longest-standing vendors. We'd worked with his team since the early days. He was old school, always called me kiddo despite my age, and never missed a quarterly. But this email wasn't familiar. It was too formal, too careful. Zinnia, I hope all is well. I noticed you weren't on the call this week, just making sure you're okay. I thought you were still CEO. Below his note was a forwarded email, sent by Astria. She signed off with the title, Co-founder CEO, a title that used to belong to me. She wrote, Zinnia is currently taking time for personal clarity. We appreciate your patience during this transition. Personal clarity? I stared at the words like they were written in a language I'd never learned. That phrase, it felt like being diagnosed with something vague, something shameful, something designed to make people whisper but not question. A euphemism for instability. The worst part, it was working. I didn't respond to Ray right away. Instead, I let the email sit in my inbox, flagged, unread. I stared at it like it might change itself if I watched it long enough. Later that day, I got a DM from Tara, a former colleague who had moved to a startup last fall. Heard what happened. Is it true they cut you out of your own company? I typed 3 different replies before closing the app. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. This was a campaign. I was being rebranded, from founder to liability, from builder to burnout, and I knew who was pulling the strings. I opened a new folder on my desktop, false narrative. I saved Ray's email, then Tara's message. I started listing the ways people were starting to refer to me in the past tense. She was great. Zinnia used to lead the team. Before the reorg. That last one stung. Reorg. As if I was just a file dragged to the trash bin during a corporate cleanup. My phone buzzed again. Bryn. He was one of the few partners who hadn't vanished into PR mode silence. I answered. Hey, I'm calling because this just doesn't feel right, he said. They said you stepped away. No, I said, steady and clear. I was stepped over. He was quiet for a beat. That's not going to sit right with a lot of us. I didn't answer. There was nothing to say that didn't sound like a plea, and I was done pleading. By evening, I'd gone through every external-facing profile tied to the company, website bios, investor decks, social media blurbs. My name was gone from all of them. But the final punch came just after midnight. I was lying on the couch, laptop resting on my thighs, TV humming in the background, more for company than entertainment. I opened LinkedIn, half out of habit. The company's page had been updated. Under leadership, there she was, Astria Cortez, co-founder CEO. And me? Gone. There wasn't even a mention in the company timeline, just a quiet restructuring. Clean, professional, polished, erasure disguised as evolution. I took a screenshot, saved it, then closed my laptop and stared at the ceiling where the shadows cast by the hallway light flickered like ghosts. That was the moment I knew. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a replacement. It was 10 days after the group message. 10 long, tedious days of watching the world turn without me while pretending I was still part of something. I had learned to expect silence from my family, but I hadn't expected them to be so efficient. That morning, I logged into the Zoom webinar under a burner email, something forgettable and corporate-sounding, just enough to slip past recognition. I knew the company was hosting a public design review, a showcase of new product directions. Normally, I would have been the one leading it, and part of me, the naive part, thought maybe they'd skip this one out of decency. They didn't. The host kicked off with too much enthusiasm, the kind that always sounded forced. Today, we're thrilled to introduce our new brand philosophy, centered on clarity, trust, and authentic leadership. Astria appeared on screen next, her hair perfectly styled, face lit with studio lighting, eyes trained on the camera like she was born for it. But it wasn't the face that struck me, it was the slides behind her. I knew those slides. I made those slides. Same palette, same phrasing, even the exact quote I wrote for a keynote 6 months ago. Authenticity isn't what you say, it's what you build when no one's looking. She paused after reading it like it had just come to her in the shower that morning. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. She didn't just take my job, I whispered into the quiet room around me. She took my tone. She spent the next 20 minutes selling my ideas, my frameworks, my diagrams, my positioning. And everyone on that call clapped, nodded, typed into the chat. Incredible vision. Powerful direction. Inspired. Inspired. The same people who once questioned every one of my decisions now applauding them, just because the voice delivering them had changed. The betrayal wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. That evening, still stunned, I clicked over to the company's website. I hadn't checked it since the redesign announcement. I don't know what I expected, some trace of me maybe, even a token mention in the founding story. There was none. Under our founders, only Lumen and Astria stared back, beaming in professional headshots next to generic bios. Built from belief, not inheritance, my motto, was gone. Replaced with, driven by integrity, united by legacy. My old page redirected to a 404. I sat in the dark, laptop screen burning into my eyes. It wasn't deletion. It was deliberate editing, like I was never there. Possession might be 9/10 of the law, but what about possession of legacy? I began printing everything, emails with my original drafts, slides with time-stamped edits, internal chats, design sketches with my handwriting in the margins. I opened a Dropbox folder labeled Narrative, another titled Proof. This wasn't about revenge, it was about reclaiming authorship. My phone buzzed later that night. A name I hadn't seen in months. Seraphine. Hey, she said quietly. Did you know? I asked. No pleasantries. I didn't, Zinnia, I swear. I thought they were just cleaning up files. I didn't know they were going to repackage it like that. I let the silence hang just long enough to make her squirm. They didn't repackage, I said finally. They plagiarized, just with better lighting. I ended the call before she could respond. Around midnight, an anonymous email landed in my inbox. No name, just a burner address. Subject line, you should see what's coming next quarter. Attached was a contract draft, preliminary, but the letterhead was real. It was a licensing deal, tied to a distribution agreement I'd originated. The kicker, they were signing under my old NDA. My name was still in the legal section, and just like that, it wasn't just betrayal, it was illegal. By 9:12 the next morning, I was seated across from Elowen in her downtown office, contract draft in hand. She wore the same soft gray blazer she always did when something serious was about to happen, something irreversible. The printed pages in front of us were covered in legal language I used to skim. Not today. Today, I read every word. The distributor's name was new, foreign, but legitimate. The licensing deal was sizable, ambitious, and built entirely on the framework I'd developed during my final year with the company. But that wasn't what made my stomach turn. It was the line beneath the signatories. Zinnia L. Cortez, co-signer, my name, my NDA, and a digital signature that looked convincingly mine. I didn't speak. I handed the page over to Elowen and let her scan it in silence. Her mouth twitched slightly as she reached the signature section, and she looked up slowly, her voice low and measured. If you hadn't caught this early, she said, you could have been personally liable for millions. I stared at her. So they're not just moving on without me? They're moving ahead on my name. She nodded. And if this had finalized, they'd have tied your name to an international deal you never even approved. We sat in silence for a moment before she pulled up her laptop and opened a shared log of document access history. Let's look into your accounts, she said. 2 hours later, we found the second crack. Astria had continued using the shared email account I'd abandoned months ago, the one linked to my identity across various vendor and investor channels. She had been corresponding with legal firms, project partners, and even product beta testers under that email. She didn't just remove me, I said quietly. She impersonated me. Elowen's typing stopped. She closed her laptop and looked me straight in the eye. This is no longer a misunderstanding. It's misrepresentation. It was the first time I felt like I had ground under my feet again. I wasn't delusional. I wasn't overreacting. I was right. We began with 3 immediate actions. First, revocation of all prior NDAs that used my name as an active party. Second, reinstating access to my own digital logs, banked timestamps, and early-stage IP drafts, proof that the work was mine and that my signature had been forged. Third, a cease and desist order drafted specifically to halt the use of my name, credentials, and digital identity within company operations. We didn't send it. Not yet. Elowen believed in building a case from the inside out, clean, tight, irrefutable. They'll make a mistake, she said. They always do. I left her office with a manila folder tucked under my arm and the kind of clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. This wasn't about vengeance. It was about setting a boundary, one with legal teeth. That evening, I poured myself a glass of water, opened my laptop, and began relabeling all my personal project files. I wasn't hiding, I was preparing. A few hours later, I got a call from Elowen. Check your inbox, she said without preamble. The subject line read, Loan Application, Co-Guarantor Zinnia Cortez. I clicked. It was a scan of a freshly filed business loan, $1.2 million, with my name listed on the 3rd page as the secondary guarantor. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Elowen broke the silence. They weren't done using you. They were just getting started. It was Thursday morning when I received the audio file. Elowen had just finished brewing her second cup of coffee when she handed me her phone with one brow raised. Seraphine sent this late last night, she said, her tone unreadable. You're going to want to hear it. I pressed play. The voice was unmistakably Astria's, smooth, controlled, perfectly modulated like everything else about her. The conversation was from an internal strategy session, one I'd clearly been excluded from long before the official exile. Zinnia's intensity doesn't align with the brand direction, Astria said. She's not relatable. She doesn't warm a room. Another voice followed, my father's. We need someone more polished for investors. She served her role. Now we evolve. Served her role. I paused the recording, leaned back slowly into the stiff leather chair, and stared out the office window. Elowen waited. I wasn't a co-founder, I said, the words dry in my mouth. I was a launchpad. They never intended to share the long game with you, she replied. They just used your momentum to get airborne. Something inside me cracked, but not in the way they might have hoped. It wasn't grief anymore. It wasn't even anger. It was precision. I'm done playing defense, I told her. We spent the next 3 hours building what Elowen called narrative armor. Every email, every draft, every contract linked to my name, we cataloged it, cross-checked timestamps, verified IP logs, secured backups on triple encrypted drives. She handed me a folder when we finished. On the tab, written in her tidy block letters, was Operation Closure. Inside, it was color-coded: legal breach, brand impersonation, emotional manipulation. I flipped through each page, breathing slower with every turn. This wasn't about revenge. This was about control of my story, my name, my value. I don't want revenge, I said, half to myself, half to her. I want boundaries. Enforced by law. Elowen nodded. Good, because we're almost there. That night, back in my apartment, I lit one of the candles I'd been hoarding for months. The expensive kind you only burn when you need the room to feel less like your past and more like your future. The audio file still buzzed in my head. Her voice, his agreement, that sterile phrase. She served her role. I reopened my laptop and added a new file to the narrative folder. Intent. I attached the audio and timestamped it. Then I opened my inbox. There it was, a calendar invite from company board. Subject: Family alignment call, mandatory attendance. Scheduled, Sunday, 10:00 a.m. PST. I stared at it for a long time before clicking accept. Not because I needed closure, because they needed a witness. The screen flickered to life at 10:02 a.m. on Sunday. I had clicked join 2 minutes late on purpose. I wanted them to wait, just a little. Let them sit in the discomfort they were so good at deflecting. The gallery filled slowly, Astria in full makeup, Lumen in a too-stiff button-down, and Isolde with her usual expression, blank concern, curated like a church program. Astria unmuted first. Zinnia, thank you for joining. This meeting is meant to realign, not to accuse. Realign, I repeated. Interesting choice of word. Is this where you start reading from the healing and growth script? Her mouth twitched, but she didn't break character. We wanted to create space for healing, not conflict. You don't create space, I said, by forging signatures. Silence, the kind that pulls the air tight. Lumen cleared his throat, already flushed. Let's not escalate things unnecessarily. I'm not escalating, I cut in. I'm correcting the record. Without warning, I shared my screen. The slides appeared one after another. First, a simple timeline. My name on patents, my role in founding documentation, my emails coordinating the very partnerships they were still cashing in on. Second slide, the contract with my name used, without consent, to secure a licensing deal, redacted for privacy, but glaringly clear where the forgery was. And third, I played the audio clip. Astria's voice rang out. Zinnia's intensity doesn't align with the brand direction. Then Lumen. She served her role, now we evolve. No one spoke. Not even Isolde, who normally could fill any void with wordy maternal nothingness. I zoomed out of the slides, let the silence hang. You didn't just cut me out of the company, I said, my voice low. You used my identity. You profited off my work. And when I became inconvenient to your image, you rewrote the narrative. Still no one responded. I clicked to the final slide, a formal cease and desist header, complete with Elowen's law firm watermark. I've already filed the paperwork, I said. Your use of my name, IP, and contributions ends today. Any further attempt to involve me in your operations, legally or by implication, will be challenged in court. Lumen looked like he wanted to stand, as if we were in a physical boardroom and he could tower over me. But he couldn't. Not here. Astria sat frozen, not blinking, her hands tightly clasped beneath the frame. Isolde leaned slightly toward the camera. Zinnia, we were protecting the family name. From the daughter who built it? I asked. Her face twitched, but no words followed. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't crying. That was the victory. They expected begging. They expected a monologue about betrayal or some plea to return. What they got instead was quiet power, cold precision, and indisputable fact. They didn't expect me to bring proof, I thought. They expected me to beg for belonging. I stopped screen sharing. You didn't just lose me, I said calmly. You lost what made this company work. I ended the call before they could respond. I didn't want to see the manufactured reactions, the practiced remorse. It was done. My phone buzzed 5 minutes later with a private message from an unknown board member. If you ever go solo, it read, I'd like to be your first investor. They tried to cut me out, but they forgot I was the blueprint. 2 days after the family call, my phone looked like it had gone through a storm. 37 missed calls, 16 voicemails, 3 emails with subject lines that all began with, please. I didn't answer any of them. The first voicemail was from Lumen. His voice cracked the way it only used to when he delivered bad quarterly results. Zinnia, I didn't know. I trusted her. I thought this was what we needed. There was a pause, like he wanted to say more, but couldn't find words that wouldn't dig deeper. Then the call just ended. The next was from Isolde. You didn't have to humiliate us. 7 words, no greeting, no punctuation, just a quiet dagger, delivered like a whisper through teeth. And then there was Astria's signature move, a cryptic Instagram story. Some filtered selfie with the caption, some people live to destroy what they can't control. A dig so obvious it may as well have been a billboard. I didn't respond. I archived everything. I created a new folder called Fallout, because that's exactly what this was. That afternoon, while I was updating my business registration, something simple and quiet with no announcement attached, I received a call from an unknown number. A bank. Hi, this is Emily from Corporate Lending Services. We're processing a loan application filed by CG Holdings, and your name is listed as a co-guarantor on the application. Except we flagged it due to a signature discrepancy. I was quiet for a beat. I'm sorry, I said calmly. I'm not affiliated with CG Holdings, nor do I co-guarantee anything filed in the last 2 months. She hesitated, sensing something behind my tone. We'd appreciate any formal statement you can provide, along with identity verification, just so we can close the fraud inquiry. Gladly, I said, and I meant it. By 5 p.m. the deal was frozen, the transaction suspended before anyone could touch a cent. It should have felt like victory, but it didn't. That night, I sat out on my balcony, the clouds drifting slowly above the Portland skyline like they had nowhere else to be. I watched the wind stir the ivy crawling up my neighbor's balcony, listened to a dog barking somewhere below. And for the first time in weeks, I let the silence be just that. Silence. No judgment, no accusation, no erasure. Just stillness. Sometimes winning doesn't look like cheering. It looks like breathing again. A text came through a little after 9 p.m. It was from Seraphine. They're a mess. Astria's spiraling. Lumen shut down the Q2 board call. You were the spine. I replied without hesitation. Then let them learn to stand. The next morning, I walked down to the notary and filed the final forms for my own LLC. No borrowed names, no shared folders, no legacy strings attached. Elowen had already done most of the legal prep. I was just finishing the paperwork. I didn't tell anyone, not my friends, not old co-workers. And certainly not my family. Because this time, I wasn't launching to prove anything. I was launching to be free. As I stood in line at the bank, waiting to submit the last of my EIN documentation, a new message popped up on my phone from an unknown number. It read, "I saw what you did. Let's talk. I'm ready to leave their side too." Not all ghosts stay loyal to the house that buried them. 3 weeks had passed since the call, since I'd shut down the feed with my final words and the board sat speechless, since the voicemail slowed and the silence settled into something colder than distance, something final. I stood in the lobby of a co-working space downtown, signing the lease for my own corner unit on the second floor. Nothing fancy, but the glass walls overlooked the tree-lined street below, and the afternoon light cast long, determined shadows across the floor. I signed my name in pen, real ink, not a forged digital signature someone could copy and paste. The name of the LLC was simple, clean, not a trace of the family brand or legacy in it. Just mine. Independent, unapologetic. As the manager handed me my keycard, I felt a strange kind of stillness settle in, the kind of stillness that doesn't come from retreat, but arrival. Later that day, I finalized contracts with 2 former vendors. They'd worked with us back when I was still CEO, before I became too intense for the family brand. When I called, neither of them hesitated. They'd been waiting for my call. They gave me the silence I needed to hear my own direction, I thought, as I watched the e-signatures come through. The shift didn't begin with a bang, it was a trickle. Quiet messages, liked posts, quiet unfollows from the company page. People talk. And when someone's treated like a ghost, others eventually ask why. That night, I walked the space with Julia, a close friend from my old firm. She ran her fingers along the brick wall that cut diagonally through the back. "This feels grounded," she said. "It's small," I replied. "It's mine, and there's not a single piece of it that was handed to me with strings." She smiled and nodded, and we both stood there, saying nothing, letting that truth settle between us. I used the weekend to finish filing everything, state forms, tax IDs, the official business bank account. Elowen reviewed the liability closure documents from the family firm, signed them off with a subtle grin. "You're clean," she said. "No legal tethers left. You're free." I scheduled a press announcement. Nothing flashy, just a short email blast and a press release buried in the second half of the local business journal. I didn't want headlines. I wanted clarity. Late Sunday night, Bryn sent me a text. "Heard you launched," it read. "Smart move staying out of their shadow." I smiled, typed back, "I'm not done rising, I just changed floors." I sat at my new desk, no plaques yet, no photos on the wall, just a laptop, a half-drunk coffee, and the dull hum of independence. It felt good. I turned off the desk lamp, locked the glass door, and checked my phone one last time before heading out. There it was. An email. Subject line, "Urgent. They've filed a counterclaim." I didn't open it, not yet, because I knew peace wouldn't come without a price, and I was ready to pay it. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday, slipped under my apartment door like something too ashamed to face the light. Inside, the expected, a formal counterclaim from my family's legal team. Pages of jargon stacked like a wall, accusations framed in velvet legal language. They alleged reputational damage, breach of non-compete, and unlawful interference with ongoing partnerships. I brought the papers straight to Elowen's office. She didn't even flinch. "This is noise," she said, flipping through the first 3 pages like they were junk mail. "All bark, no enforceable bite. They're trying to scare you into silence, that's all." I nodded, more tired than angry. Even now, they still think I'm afraid of them. Elowen looked at me over the rim of her glasses. "Are you?" "No," I said, and meant it. "Just done." Back home, I made tea I wouldn't drink and stared at the same corner of the ceiling I always did when my mind refused to rest. It wasn't grief anymore. It was a quiet ache for something I never had, recognition without compromise. Later that evening, I was cleaning out the drawers in my desk when I found an old burner phone I hadn't used in years. I plugged it in, half out of curiosity, half as a way to avoid thinking. As it booted, a series of missed voicemails queued up, all from Lumen. The most recent was dated 4 years ago. I listened. "She's brilliant," his voice said, cracked and tired. "But she's hard. People like Astria, they connect more easily. Investors need someone warmer. He never sent it, never said it out loud. But there it was, the belief he carried in secret, that I was competent but not palatable, valuable but replaceable. It wasn't that he didn't see my strength, it's that he saw it as a liability. I sat with that truth for a while, let it bleed through all the false affirmations they'd ever fed me. Every "you're the backbone of this company" had always come with an unspoken, "but don't scare the donors." The next morning, I walked to the cafe around the corner, same one I used to go to during late-night crunch weeks. I ordered an Americano and sat by the window, scrolling mindlessly through emails, trying to pretend my hands weren't shaking. A woman approached my table, maybe mid-50s, smart gray streak in her hair, eyes kind, but direct. "Are you Zinnia?" she asked softly. I blinked. "Yes. Do I know you?" "No, but I heard you on that podcast, the one about resilience and ethical business exits." She smiled. "You said something I never forgot, that sometimes we heal by not going back." My chest tightened. "Thank you. I wasn't sure anyone was listening." "I was," she said. "Still am." After she left, I opened my inbox. The counterclaim email sat unread, its subject line heavy and bold. I clicked it, scanned the attachments, saved the PDF to my records. Then I hit delete. I composed a reply to their counsel. Simple, professional. "I will not respond to intimidation. Let the record stand." And that was it. Later that day, I opened my phone's emergency contact settings. For years, Lumen and Isolde were listed, just like any daughter would have. I deleted them, typed in, "Elowin Legal," hit save. That night, I found a small envelope in my mailbox. No return address. Just my name in handwriting I hadn't seen in years, my own. Inside was a photo. One of the earliest company pictures, taken before we had office furniture or a real logo. Everyone was crowded into frame, and for once, I wasn't cropped out. It was the only copy that ever included me. On the back, in faded pen, I'd once scribbled, "This time, I'll keep it." They erased me from their future. So I reclaimed my past. The counterclaim was gone. No public statement, no apology. Just a quiet withdrawal, like someone tiptoeing out of a room they'd set on fire. Elowin confirmed it in 2 sentences over coffee in my office that morning. They dropped it, quietly, "It's done." I stared at her for a beat. "No court hearing?" She shook her head. No appetite for that kind of exposure. They didn't lose the case. They lost the leverage, and me. Later that afternoon, a new email arrived in my inbox, from Astria. "I know you probably hate me, but I want to say thank you, even if you never reply." I didn't. I forwarded it to a folder on my desktop labeled Proof of Pattern. Then I opened my journal and wrote, "I don't need an apology. I needed boundaries. And I built them." It felt clean, not triumphant, just clean. The next morning, I hung the photo. It was one of the earliest shots of us, back before the investors, the offices, the branding workshops. Back when the company was just 2 folding tables, my whiteboard, and a lot of unpaid hours. It was the only known copy that included me, the one they hadn't cropped, the one I'd once found stuffed in a manila envelope at the back of a filing drawer. I framed it and placed it opposite the entrance to my new office. That way, anyone who walked in would see exactly where this story started. I didn't need their version of the past anymore. I had my own. "You don't need to burn bridges," I said aloud, rehearsing a quote I'd written for an upcoming interview. "Some collapse under their own weight. You just need to stop rebuilding them." A week later, Blueprint Rising went live. It was a mentorship initiative, quiet, lean, and deeply personal, designed for women who had been forced out of the very companies they helped build. No flashy logos, no gala launches, just an open-door policy and a website with one sentence on the landing page: "You are not difficult. You are just early." Within 3 days, I received 19 applications. Bryn called later that week. "Funny how they thought they could run the machine without the one who built it." I smiled. They thought I was just a part. They forgot. I was the blueprint. My calendar was finally full again, but not the way it used to be. I took meetings with intention. I said no more than I said yes. And every time I closed my laptop at night, I felt more whole than I ever had before. On Friday evening, as the sun lowered into the skyline, I turned off the lights in the office, locked the door, and looked once more at the plaque beside it. Founder, Zinnia L. Cortez. That was mine now. Not borrowed, not assigned, not inherited. Mine. I walked into the warm air of early evening. No phone buzzing, no one left to explain myself to. Because some stories don't end in reconciliation. They end in freedom.